How's it going, my friends? Have you ever found yourself eating the brownies out of the pan with a fork? You can't stop. You know you're going to be physically ill, yet your hands keep moving the fork from the pan to your mouth. If this is you, you're going to love this video. Stay tuned, because today I'm going to help you understand some of the psychology behind the brownie binge. As a side note, last week I discussed the relationship between out-of-control eating and biological hunger. Check it out. I'll link the video in the description below. I'm Jenny Bilski-Smith, your food and body image coach. I'm a psychotherapist with a degree in nutrition, exercise, and psychology. I share tips and tricks to help you heal your relationship with food and your body from a physical, emotional, and even spiritual lens, so you find joy and satisfaction in food, your body, and your life. When you have these moments of feeling out of control around food, you might try to make sense of it. You may have researched binge eating, emotional eating, and so on. First of all, good for you for trying to understand what's going on. And second, if you're still confused, you're not alone in your confusion. Let me try to clear some things up for you. Here's the step most people miss, and taking this step might have a profound and positive impact on your eating. This step asks that you change your relationship with food. You might be saying, hold on, Jenny, I have real problems. You're telling me all I need to do is change my relationship with food. Hear me out. It's quite possible that your bouts of out-of-control eating are driven by your belief system around food. It's quite possible that there's nothing wrong with you, you're not broken, you're not an addict, you're not bad. You just might have a belief system that you didn't know was harming you. So let's dig in a little further. I've never had a client come to me and say, I just can't control myself around Brussels sprouts. It doesn't happen. It's always the foods they were taught were bad for them. You might say, well, that's because sweets are addictive. But the research shows us a different story. Instead, it shows us that when we put food in the category of good and bad, our desire for the bad food grows. What's the solution? Teach your brain that food is neither good nor bad. It's neutral. Easier said than done, right? I'll give you some specific tips in a minute. Whatever food your mind puts in the bad category makes it more likely that that food will be your binge food. That feeling of doing something bad or wrong sets off a whole series of thoughts. When you think it's bad, you probably try to avoid it. But when you try to avoid it, that just makes the desire for it grow. It becomes more and more urgent. The desire for it grows and becomes harder and harder to resist. This idea is well researched. In a study called Don't Eat the Red Food, researchers watched a group of kids. Half the kids were allowed to eat as much of the target food as they wanted, while the other half was told by adults and parents not to eat the target food. Guess what? The desire for the target food increased in the group that was asked to restrict it, but not in the other group. And the phenomena is true when you tell kids not to eat fruit. They want more. I'd love to share all the studies with you that were done on kids and adults about the increased rates of out-of-control eating when food is categorized as bad, but a lot of times when I start talking about research, people's eyes glaze over. If you're interested, I'll link a few of those studies in the description below. You might say, oh, but Jenny, I do allow myself to eat the food. I don't restrict myself and my eating is still out of control. Here's where serious psychology comes in. What is your mind telling you while you're eating these foods? Many times while you're eating the potato chips, your mind is saying, you know you shouldn't be eating that. Or it'll say, okay, you can have some, but you have to limit yourself. Only the allotted serving size. And by the way, how many calories are in this? And oh, that is a lot of calories. Think of all the cholesterol, fat, salt. So you see, you're not even enjoying the potato chips when the voice in your head is shaming and limiting you. The message you think you're giving your brain is, tell it how bad this is for me and I won't eat it. The message your brain is actually hearing is, there will never be enough. Eat now while it's available because you'll get cut off soon. You never know when you'll be able to have this food again, so eat a lot now. You can see how that increases the urgency around this food. So what do? How do you change your relationship with food? Here are 4 tips. Number 1, what if we recognize that food serves several purposes? It's there to nourish you and your body, but eating is also emotional and there's actually nothing wrong with that. Can you offer yourself some permission to feel nourished by potato chips? Why? because they're pleasant. They do taste good, and eating potato chips is not going to kill you. Now, I get it. The thought of offering this permission can be scary. The fear of losing control can be triggered, and you may fear you'll gain weight. That fear is really normal. You might consider thanking the fear for trying to protect you and gently remind it that restricting and good and bad thinking wasn't working either. And to the point that food is emotional, and there's nothing wrong with that, think about a baby eating. A huge part of the feeding experience is the bonding that occurs with the parent. In other words, a huge part of that feeding is the emotional, it feeds your soul aspect of eating. All different kinds of hormones are released that reduce stress and connect the baby to the parent and the parent to the baby. It's the way we're designed. When you become an adult, you take over the role of nourishing yourself. It's supposed to be so soothing. Sometimes when you've had a hard day that creates a lot of anxiety, there's nothing more grounding than a really good meal. You might start to challenge the idea that eating for comfort is bad, because it's not. Remember, it's not the eating for comfort that makes eating out of control. Instead, it's the belief that you shouldn't eat for comfort that makes it out of control. Number 2, you might start to gradually reintegrate the foods that scare you. You can do this in a way that makes you feel safe. You might even make a list of all the foods that your mind considers forbidden. Then slowly add them back. You might identify a mantra that works for you. For example, you might say, I'm allowed to eat for pleasure. Eating for pleasure is not the same as gluttony. By offering myself permission to eat all foods, I'm healing my relationship with food. There may be a period where you'll eat more of the foods you previously identified as forbidden, and that can feel scary. In most circumstances, my clients notice that this levels off pretty quickly. Number 3, you might run a little experiment. When eating a food that was previously forbidden, can you really notice the taste of it? Do you actually like it? A lot of times my clients have this idea that they would devour an entire cake if they didn't limit themselves. Then when they actually taste the cake, they don't like it as much as they thought they would. It's also really normal for the opposite to be true. When you first take a bite of that Snickers bar, it tastes amazing. It can be a little scary because the pleasure is so intense that you fear you'll never stop. But you might notice that after several bites, the taste changes. It gets less and less intense, less and less yummy. This is your wise body telling you that you might be close to being done. As a side note, in the beginning stages, it can be helpful to tell yourself something like, just because I'm taking the time to notice when my body is done, doesn't mean I have to stop eating. Wait, huh? Wait, huh? Wait, huh? Here's why. More psychology. If you think you'll have to stop eating by noticing, if you don't want to stop eating, you'll be less likely to notice. We're trying to create the space to learn and grow. How can we make it as gentle as possible? Eventually, you really will just stop when your body is done. And number 4, finally, as you work with healing your relationship with food, try to bring an attitude of curiosity and non-judgment. What can you learn from each eating experience? Let's wrap up. Changing your relationship with food can be difficult, but the work is so worth it. Sometimes it's helpful to get the help of a therapist that specializes in food and body image issues. It's nice to have a compassionate, objective observer helping you reflect your patterns back to you. Remember, your intuitive body knows what it needs. It's just a matter of reconnecting with that wisdom. Let me know in the comments what else you'd like to learn about as it relates to food, body, trauma, anxiety, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'm going to keep exploring all things food and body, so you want to make sure you get the notifications. I can't wait to hear from you. Between now and next time, may you find a little more peace in your relationship with food and your body. See you later. Several purposes. It will where you'll